This wasn't normal. Nothing about this was remotely normal. A stranger lay collapsed on my garage floor, his expensive suit torn and stained, his body completely still except for the shallow rise and fall of his chest. I froze in the doorway, my toolbox slipping from my grip and clattering to the concrete. The sound would have been loud, should have been loud, but I felt only the vibration through my feet, the same way I experienced every noise in my silent world. I had come here this morning to fix Mrs. Henderson's old sedan, just another routine day in my struggling one-man automotive repair business. Instead, I found this. A man. Injured. Possibly dying. In my workspace, my heart hammered against my ribs as I stared at him. His eyes were half closed, unfocused, his skin alarmingly pale. I could see his chest moving, barely in that terrible slow-motion rhythm that meant someone was clinging to consciousness by a thread. My hearing aid sat uselessly in my ear. Expensive piece of equipment that had never worked for me, not since the day I was born into complete silence. But I didn't need sound to understand what I was seeing. This man needed help. Desperately. His lips moved slightly. I dropped to my knees beside him, watching his mouth carefully. Years of lip reading had made me proficient at catching even the smallest movements. Help, he mouthed, the word forming clearly despite his weakness. That single word jolted me into action. My hands trembled as I reached for his jacket, carefully peeling it back to assess the damage. A wound marked his shoulder, clean, precise, like something had gone straight through. Oh God. I wasn't a doctor. I wasn't trained for this. I was just a mechanic who barely kept his business afloat, who spent 14-hour days covered in grease and oil just to make rent on this tiny garage space. But I couldn't leave him like this. I couldn't just walk away. Stay with me, I said aloud. Though my voice came out wrong, it always did. I couldn't hear myself speak, couldn't modulate the tone or volume properly. My words probably sounded garbled, distorted by my deaf accent that I'd never been able to correct because I'd never been able to hear it. But maybe he could understand. Maybe my effort mattered. I grabbed my first aid kit from the shelf, my hands still shaking as I tore it open. Everything I knew about emergency care came from YouTube videos and online tutorials I'd studied obsessively after a customer had a heart attack in my shop 2 years ago. Basic pressure, clean bandaging, keep the victim conscious. I could do this. I had to do this. As I worked, pressing gauze against the wound, wrapping bandages with desperate precision, I found myself studying his face. Even pale and injured, there was something striking about him. Strong jawline, dark hair that fell across his forehead, and those eyes, when they briefly focused on me, held an intensity that made my breath catch. Suddenly his hand shot out and gripped my wrist. The strength in that grip startled me, made me gasp silently. For someone who seemed barely conscious, his hold was remarkably firm, almost possessive. His lips moved again. I leaned closer, concentrating hard on reading the words. You smell different. Different? What kind of observation was that at a time like this? The man was injured, possibly in shock, and he was commenting on how I smelled. But even as I questioned it, something stirred inside me, an unfamiliar sensation in my chest, like a pull I'd never experienced before. Warmth spread through me, starting from where his hand gripped my wrist and radiating outward. Then his eyes changed. Just for a second they flashed gold, bright, unmistakable, supernatural, alpha. The realization hit me like a physical blow. This man was an alpha, a true alpha, with all the power and dominance that implied. And I was an omega, the weakest designation in our hierarchical society. A deaf omega at that, someone who already struggled with daily discrimination and prejudice. I'd spent my entire life trying to prove I was capable despite my disability, despite my secondary gender, despite everything stacked against me. And now an injured alpha had literally collapsed in my garage. The warmth in my chest intensified, that strange pull growing stronger. It felt like invisible threads were connecting us, weaving between our bodies in a way I couldn't explain and didn't understand. This shouldn't be happening. I didn't even know this man's name. I'd found him bleeding on my floor minutes ago. There was no logical reason for this feeling, this connection, but my omega instincts knew. Somewhere deep and primal they recognized something in him, responded to something about him, and that terrified me more than finding him injured. I forced myself to focus on the practical. He needed medical attention. Real medical attention, not my amateur first aid. But something held me back from calling for help. Maybe it was the expensive suit that screamed money and power. Maybe it was the way he'd appeared in my locked garage without explanation. Maybe it was those gold-flashing eyes that marked him as far more dangerous than any ordinary person. Or maybe it was that inexplicable pull telling me to keep this between us. "You're going to be okay," I mouthed clearly, hoping he could lip read as well as I could. "Just stay still. Let me help you." He watched me work with those intense eyes, never looking away even as I cleaned and dressed his wound. The bleeding had slowed considerably, alpha healing factor, probably already working to repair the damage. That was good. It meant he'd survived this, at least long enough for his body to do what mine never could, heal rapidly and efficiently. 20 minutes passed. 30. His color improved marginally, his breathing steadier. The wound was properly bandaged now, and I'd done everything I knew how to do. He needed rest. He needed actual medical care. But he also needed to not be found. I sensed something about this situation screamed secrecy, danger, consequences. His eyes had closed at some point, his body finally surrendering to exhaustion. I sat back on my heels, staring at this mysterious stranger who'd crashed into my carefully controlled, quiet life. My garage suddenly felt smaller, the air charged with something I couldn't name. Who was he? Why had he come here? How had he even gotten into my locked garage? And what was I supposed to do now? The questions piled up in my mind, each one more troubling than the last. But underneath all of them ran that constant thread of awareness, that pull, that warmth, that impossible connection forming between us, whether I wanted it or not. I looked down at my hands, still trembling slightly, now marked with his blood. I'd saved him. I'd made a choice in that split second when I could have called the police, could have walked away, could have protected myself by staying uninvolved. Instead, I'd knelt beside a stranger and fought to keep him alive. And somehow, I knew that choice was going to change everything. 3 hours crawled by in tense silence, my permanent silence. At least, I'd positioned myself across the garage from him, maintaining distance while keeping watch. A wrench sat in my lap, gripped tightly enough that my knuckles had gone white. Not that I thought I could actually defend myself against an alpha if he turned violent when he woke. But the weight of the tool provided some small comfort, some illusion of control in a situation that had spiraled completely beyond my understanding. His condition had stabilized remarkably. The bleeding had stopped entirely, and even through the bandages, I could tell the wound was already beginning to knit itself back together. Alpha physiology at work, that supernatural healing ability that made them so much more resilient than omegas like me. Within a day or two, he'd probably show no sign of injury at all. The unfairness of it struck me. Not for the first time. I'd lived my entire life with limitations. My deafness, my omega status, my constant struggle to be taken seriously in a world that saw me as doubly deficient. Meanwhile, alphas healed from gunshot wounds in hours. His eyelids flickered. I tensed, shifting my grip on the wrench. After several false starts, his eyes finally opened fully and immediately found me with laser focus. There was no confusion in that gaze, no disorientation. He assessed the situation in seconds. His location, his condition, my presence, with the sharp awareness of someone trained for danger. He began pushing himself upright. I jumped to my feet, making broad hand gestures to stop him, but he ignored me completely. Moving with careful deliberation, he maneuvered into a sitting position, his jaw tight with suppressed pain. One hand went to his bandaged shoulder, probing gently, while his other hand braced against the floor. Then he looked directly at me and spoke. His lips formed clear words. "Who are you?" I fumbled for my phone, my lifeline for communication in situations like this. My fingers flew across the screen, typing quickly before turning it to show him. "I'm Jordan. You're in my garage. You were badly injured when I found you this morning. I don't know how you got here or what happened to you." He read the message carefully, his expression unreadable. Then he tried standing. I lunged forward instinctively, gesturing frantically for him to stop, already typing on my phone again. "Don't move too much. Your wound could reopen. You need to rest." But he rose anyway, moving with surprising grace despite the injury. He was tall, I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes, and powerfully built. Even through his ruined suit, I could see the definition of muscle, the broad shoulders, the physical presence that commanded space. He radiated authority and danger in equal measure, and standing this close to him made that strange pull in my chest intensify, until it was almost painful. His gaze traveled over me slowly, analytically. I felt exposed under that scrutiny, like he was cataloging every detail, my oil-stained work clothes, my defensive posture, the hearing aid I wore out of habit despite its uselessness. The phone clutched in my hand like a shield. He spoke again, and I focused intently on his lips. "You saved me. Why would you do that?" I typed rapidly. "Because you were dying? What kind of question is that? I couldn't just ignore someone bleeding on my floor. Who does that?" Something shifted in his expression, a smile but not a warm one. It held darkness, cynicism, bitter knowledge. He gestured for my phone, raising his eyebrows in question. I hesitated, then handed it over, watching nervously as he typed. His response appeared on the screen. Most people would have, especially if they were smart. Trust me on that. I didn't understand what he meant, but the words carried weight. Threat, maybe, or warning. This man existed in a world I knew nothing about, operated by rules I'd never encountered, and I'd voluntarily pulled him into my space, into my life without understanding the consequences. The scent hit me again. Cedar wood and something wild, something primal that made my omega biology react in ways I'd never experienced before. My instincts were screaming at me, a confusing mix of attraction and alarm, desire and self-preservation. I'd never responded to anyone like this. Ever. I took my phone back and typed, "What's your name? Do you need me to call someone? An ambulance? The police?" He watched me type, and something flickered in his eyes at that last word. Not fear. Alphas like him didn't fear police, but calculation, consideration of angles and consequences. He took the phone again and typed slowly, deliberately, "Dante. Dante Cross." My blood turned to ice. Even I knew that name. Even someone like me who avoided news and social media, who kept my head down and focused solely on surviving day to day. Even I had heard whispers about the Cross family. Underground empire. Dangerous connections. Territory wars. The kind of people you never wanted to notice you existed. I'd saved a mob boss. A genuine crime lord. In my garage, panic surged through me. I grabbed my phone back and typed frantically, "You need to leave. Right now. Please. If someone is looking for you, if they find you here, if they connect you to me, I can't. I just can't have this kind of trouble. My business is barely surviving as it is." Dante read my message without expression, then studied me for a long moment. When he took the phone to respond, his typing was calm, measured. "They won't find me here. Not immediately. You're safe for now." I made sure of that, but then he paused, and his next message felt heavier somehow. "But your omega, I can sense it clearly now. Your suppressants must be wearing off." My heart stuttered. I'd been so focused on his injury, on the danger he represented, that I hadn't thought about my own vulnerability. I typed back, "I'm completely deaf. I can't hear anything you might be saying. I don't understand what you're implying. Please just leave." Dante's response came slowly, each word chosen with care. "I don't need you to hear me, Jordan. I need you to understand something critical. Your scent is different from any omega I've encountered in 32 years of life. It's not just pleasant or appealing. It's pulling at something fundamental inside me, calling to my alpha in ways that shouldn't be possible." I stared at the words on the screen, my hands beginning to shake. No, this couldn't be happening. This wasn't real. I typed, "You need to leave now, please." But Dante moved closer instead, deliberate and unhurried. He took the phone from my numb fingers and typed one more message, then held the screen directly in front of my face so I couldn't look away. "I'll leave for now. You're right that my presence here puts you at risk. But I'm coming back, Jordan. Soon. Because every instinct I possess is telling me something impossible. Something that changes everything. You might be my fated mate." Fated mate. Those words belonged in fairy tales, in romance novels, in legends passed down through generations. They weren't real. They didn't happen to people like me, broken, disabled, barely scraping by. Before I could respond, Before I could process what he'd said, Dante moved toward the door. He walked carefully but steadily, his alpha healing already restoring his strength. At the threshold he turned back one last time, his golden eyes capturing mine across the garage space. Then he was gone. I stood frozen in place, phone clutched in shaking hands, my entire world tilted on its axis. The garage felt emptier somehow, colder, as if his presence had filled a space I hadn't known was vacant. That pull in my chest hadn't faded. If anything, it had grown stronger, stretching like an elastic band between us, connecting us across distance. Fated mate, the words echoed in my mind, impossible and terrifying and somehow true. Some deep part of me, the Omega instincts I'd spent years trying to suppress and ignore, recognized what Dante had named, acknowledged that connection, wanted it, and that scared me more than anything else that had happened today. Because wanting meant hoping, and hoping meant vulnerability, and vulnerability meant pain. I'd learned that lesson early and thoroughly. The world wasn't kind to people like me. It didn't give us fairy tale endings, or fated mates, or happy resolutions. It gave us struggle and disappointment and survival. But as I finally moved to clean up the blood-stained gauze and ruined bandages, as I tried to restore my garage to its normal state, I couldn't shake the feeling that normal had just become impossible. Dante Cross would come back. He'd promised as much. And when he did, everything would change. The next morning arrived with deceptive normalcy. Sunlight streamed through the garage windows, painting familiar patterns across concrete floors. I'd swept 1,000 times. My tools hung in their designated spots on the pegboard wall, each one exactly where it belonged. The coffee maker in the corner burbled silently through its cycle. I couldn't hear it, but I'd memorized the timing. Knew from the steam rising that my morning caffeine would be ready soon. Everything looked normal. Felt normal. But underneath that surface, ordinary calm anxiety churned in my stomach like acid. I couldn't stop thinking about Dante. About those gold flashing eyes. About words typed on a phone screen, fated mate. About the way my entire body had responded to his presence. That gravitational pull I'd never experienced before and didn't know how to process now. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him bleeding on my floor, watching me with that intense focus, typing those impossible words. My usually reliable routines felt disrupted, my carefully constructed sense of order shattered by a few hours with a stranger who'd crashed into my life without permission. Focus on work. I told myself firmly. Work was solid, reliable, comprehensible. Mrs. Henderson's sedan still needed that transmission fluid change. Mr. Kim's truck required new brake pads. These were problems I could solve, challenges I understood, unlike whatever had happened yesterday with Dante Cross. I forced myself to move through morning tasks, checking inventory, organizing parts, responding to the 3 emails that had arrived overnight requesting quotes. Normal mechanic things. Safe things. By noon, I'd almost convinced myself yesterday had been some kind of stress-induced hallucination. Then the vibration started. I was bent over an engine block, wrench in hand, when I felt it. Sharp, aggressive knocking transmitted through the concrete floor. Not the tentative tap of a customer. Not the rhythmic knock of someone making a delivery. This was demanding. Violent. Wrong. I straightened slowly, turning toward the garage entrance. My heart dropped into my stomach. 3 men stood inside my workspace. I hadn't heard them enter, obviously, but I should have locked the door. Why hadn't I locked the door? They'd just walked in like they owned the place, and now they stood between me and the exit. Their body language broadcasting threat with every tensed muscle. Guns. I saw guns not drawn, but visible in shoulder holsters beneath leather jackets. Their faces were hard, scarred in places. Eyes cold with the kind of calculated violence that comes from professional experience. These weren't random thugs. These were soldiers. Enforced, and they were looking at me like prey. The closest one stepped forward quickly, his mouth moving rapidly. I caught fragments through lip reading, difficult when someone spoke fast and angry, but enough to know he was asking questions, demanding answers. My hands trembled as I raised them in surrender, then fumbled desperately for my phone. The universal gesture of compliance first, then communication. Please let them understand. Please let them give me time to explain. I typed with shaking fingers, holding the screen out toward them. I can't hear anything. I'm completely deaf. I use my phone to communicate. Please tell me what you want. The man snatched my phone from my hands roughly, his grip crushing. He read the screen, his expression twisting with frustration and contempt. Then he typed harsh stabbing keystrokes and shoved the phone back at me. The message read, "Where is Dante Cross? We know he was here. Tell us now or this gets ugly." Terror flooded my system. Pure and primal. They knew, somehow they'd tracked Dante here, connected him to my garage. To me, every instinct screamed danger, but I had nowhere to run, no way to fight back against 3 armed men who could snap me like a twig. I typed back frantically, hands barely coordinating. "I haven't seen anyone matching that description. You must have the wrong place. Please, I'm just a mechanic. I don't know anything about anything. Just please leave." The man's face darkened with anger. He didn't believe me, that much was obvious from his expression alone. Before I could react, he grabbed my collar and slammed me backward against the wall. Pain exploded through my shoulders and spine, driving the air from my lungs in a silent gasp. I couldn't even hear. His face was inches from mine, mouth moving in what were clearly curses and threats. I couldn't catch all the words, the angle was wrong. His speech too rapid, but the intent was crystal clear. Talk or suffer. The other 2 men spread through my garage like locusts, tearing through everything systematically. Tools crashed to the floor. I felt each impact through vibrations. Parts bins overturned, scattering screws and bolts across concrete. They ripped open cabinets, upended shelves, destroyed months of careful organization in their search for evidence, for Dante, for any clue connecting this place to the man they hunted. I was helpless, completely, utterly helpless. I couldn't fight them, couldn't run, couldn't even scream for help that wouldn't come anyway. This was every nightmare scenario I'd avoided by keeping my head down, by staying invisible, by never attracting attention or trouble. And now trouble had found me anyway, dragged into my safe space by an alpha I'd tried to save. The man holding me raised his fist, clearly preparing to make his questioning more physical. I braced myself, closing my eyes instinctively against the coming blow. Then suddenly his grip vanished, released so abruptly I nearly collapsed. I opened my eyes to chaos. Another figure had entered my garage, moving so fast I'd missed the arrival entirely. Dante. Except this version of Dante bore little resemblance to the injured man I'd bandaged yesterday. This Dante radiated lethal intent, his eyes blazing that supernatural gold, his movements predatory and precise. The man who'd been holding me was now airborne, flying backward to crash into my workbench with force that splintered wood. Even unable to hear the impact, I winced at the visible violence of it. I watched frozen in shock as Dante dismantled the other 2 men with brutal efficiency. No wasted motion, no hesitation, every strike calculated for maximum impact. He moved like violence incarnate, like every martial arts movie I'd ever watched condensed into one terrifying individual. One attacker pulled his gun. Dante's hand shot out faster than I could track, wrenched the weapon away and used it to pistol whip the man across the temple. The attacker dropped like a stone. The 3rd man charged from behind. Dante spun, somehow sensing the attack despite not looking, and drove an elbow into the attacker's solar plexus, followed by a knee to the face as the man doubled over. Another body hit the floor. 30 seconds, maybe less. 3 armed, trained men reduced to groaning, broken obstacles. Then Dante was in front of me, his hands carefully cupping my face with startling gentleness that contrasted sharply with the violence he'd just unleashed. His eyes, still that eerie gold, searched mine with desperate intensity. His lips moved. "Are you hurt? Did they hurt you?" I managed to shake my head, though I was trembling so badly I could barely control the movement. Adrenaline and shock warred in my system, making everything feel distant and surreal. Dante's hands moved over me anyway, checking for injuries with methodical thoroughness, despite my head shake. Shoulders, arms, ribs where I'd hit the wall. His touch remained gentle throughout, at odds with the warrior who'd just destroyed 3 men with his bare hands. He reached for my phone, still clutched somehow in my death grip, and typed quickly, "Did they hurt you? Any pain? Be honest." I took the phone with numb fingers and typed back, "I'm fine, just scared. But Dante, they were looking specifically for you. They knew you'd been here. If these people found me, others will come. You brought danger directly to my doorstep. His jaw tightened, muscles jumping beneath skin as he read my words. He typed carefully. I know. I'm sorry. I didn't think they'd track me here this quickly. Vincent Moretti, my rival, is more resourceful than I anticipated. He knows about you now. About this place. My fingers shook as I typed. About me? Why would anyone care about me? I'm nobody. Nothing. Just someone who made a mistake helping the wrong person. Dante's response came slowly, weighted with meaning. You're not nobody to me, and that's the problem. Vincent operates on leverage and weakness. He'll see you as both. He'll use you to strike at me if he can. The full implications crashed over me like ice water. I typed frantically. Then what am I supposed to do? This garage is everything I have. My work, my income, my entire life. I can't just abandon it. I can't afford to start over somewhere else. I barely survive as it is. Dante stared at the screen for a long moment before typing his response. Come with me to my penthouse. I have security there, protection. I can keep you safe while I deal with Vincent permanently. I typed back immediately. Are you insane? I can't just leave my entire life. I don't know you. I saved you once and look what it cost me. My garage destroyed. Armed men attacking me. And now you want me to move into your place like some kind of, what, prisoner? Protected asset? His eyes locked onto mine with uncomfortable intensity as he typed. Not a prisoner. Never that. But Jordan, these are genuinely dangerous people. Vincent Moretti doesn't make threats he won't follow through on. He's brutal, creative, and patient. If he's decided you're connected to me, he'll exploit that weakness ruthlessly. Next time, I might not arrive in time to stop them. My breath came in short, panicked bursts. This couldn't be happening. 24 hours ago, my biggest worry was making rent. Now I was caught between mob factions, targeted by people who killed without hesitation. I typed, I don't have a choice, do I? Dante's response was brutally honest. You always have a choice. But the choice to stay here, to pretend yesterday never happened, to hope they'll leave you alone, that choice ends badly. I've seen it play out too many times. Please trust me on this. Trust. He kept using that word, asking me to trust him when trusting him had already destroyed my sense of safety and security. When his presence in my life had attracted violence and danger I'd spent years carefully avoiding. But when I looked into his eyes, those impossible gold eyes, I saw genuine concern, real fear for my safety. And that pull, that connection I still couldn't explain or ignore, thrummed between us like a living thing. My omega instincts whispered what my rational mind rejected. He'll keep you safe. He'll protect you. Trust him. I typed slowly, just until this Vincent situation is handled. Then I come back here and we forget this ever happened. Agreed? Relief flooded Dante's features. He nodded firmly and typed, agreed. I promise. He extended his hand, an offer, not a demand. After a moment's hesitation, I placed my hand in his. His grip was warm, strong, careful not to squeeze too hard. As he led me toward the door, stepping over the groaning bodies of our attackers, I cast one last look at my garage. My sanctuary, my life's work. It looked violated now, torn apart, no longer safe. Everything had changed in 24 hours. And somehow I knew there was no going back to normal. Not anymore. Dante's penthouse existed in a reality I'd never imagined inhabiting. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking panorama of the city skyline. Glass so clean it seemed invisible, creating the illusion of floating 40 stories above street level. Furniture that belonged in architectural magazines filled the space, sleek leather sofas, minimalist tables with geometric precision, artwork that probably cost more than I'd earn in 5 years. Security cameras monitored every corner with red blinking lights. Technology I couldn't name hummed silently throughout the space, all controlled by touch screens and voice commands I'd never be able to use. And there I stood, a struggling mechanic, who counted pennies to afford ramen, wearing oil-stained jeans and a faded work shirt in the middle of luxury so extreme it felt like trespassing. Dante led me down a hallway lined with abstract paintings, each one probably worth more than my entire garage. He stopped at a door and opened it to reveal what he called a guest bedroom. The space was easily double the size of my garage apartment. maybe triple. A king-sized bed dominated the center, dressed in pristine white linens that looked like they'd never been touched. An entire wall of windows showcased the city below. Furniture clustered in tasteful arrangements. A reading chair, a desk, built-in shelving. He pulled out his phone and typed carefully, "This is your private space. Bathroom through that door has everything you might need. Marco is my head of security and most trusted associate. I'm programming his contact into your phone right now so you can reach him anytime." A tall man with a serious expression and military bearing approached us. Marco nodded respectfully in my direction, then politely gestured for my phone. I handed it over, watching as he efficiently saved his number and immediately sent a test message that appeared on my screen. "Hello Jordan. If you need anything at all, just text. I monitor my phone constantly and respond within minutes." I nodded gratefully, relieved that at least the communication system here would function smoothly. Being deaf in an unfamiliar environment multiplied my usual anxiety tenfold, but having a reliable contact eased that slightly. Before leaving, Dante caught my attention with a hand wave and typed another message. "Please inform me before leaving the penthouse. This isn't about restricting your freedom, you're genuinely not safe outside right now. Vincent has associates throughout the entire city who report directly to him." I took my phone back and typed firmly, "So I am essentially a prisoner here? Let's be honest about this situation." His response came immediately. Forceful, "Absolutely not. Never. You're under my protection, which is fundamentally different from imprisonment. You can walk out that door right now if you truly want to. But I'm asking, not ordering you, to stay here where I can ensure your safety." Then he left for what he vaguely described as business obligations, abandoning me in this gilded cage that smelled of expensive cologne and leather. The first several days blurred together in uncomfortable adjustment. I couldn't leave freely to breathe fresh air or take walks that had always helped my anxiety. Security cameras tracked my every movement through the penthouse. Guards stationed at the entrance nodded politely but reminded me constantly that I was under surveillance, under protection, under control. Dante vanished for hours each day into his dangerous business dealings, leaving me alone with my thoughts in growing claustrophobia. But I noticed a pattern emerging. Every night around the same time, 11:15, confirmed by checking my phone repeatedly, he would walk past my bedroom door. Not entering, not knocking, just passing by as if confirming my continued presence and safety. After a full week of this routine, insomnia finally defeated me completely. Nightmares had been relentless, replaying the attack, the guns, the crushing helplessness of being grabbed while unable to hear danger approaching. Anxiety coiled in my chest like barbed wire, making breathing difficult. I gave up on sleep around 2 in the morning and wandered to the living room, hoping the city lights might calm my racing thoughts. Dante was already there, illuminated by the glow of nighttime traffic 40 floors below. He'd removed his shirt, revealing the shoulder wound that had now healed completely. Not even a scar remained thanks to alpha physiology. He held a crystal tumbler, the amber liquid inside catching and refracting light. He startled when he noticed me, genuine surprise crossing his features. Immediately reaching for his phone, he typed, "Nightmares keeping you awake?" I nodded and settled onto the opposite end of the sofa, maintaining careful distance between us. Silence stretched out, not awkward exactly, but heavy with unspoken questions and suppressed emotions. We both stared at the city lights, lost in separate contemplations. After what felt like an eternity, I gathered courage and typed, "Why did you actually return to my garage after leaving that first time?" His eyes found mine, intense but displaying unusual vulnerability. He typed slowly, thoughtfully, "Because I needed to see you again, to verify whether what I was experiencing was real or imagined." I typed back, "Experiencing what specifically?" He hesitated, fingers hovering over the keyboard. This was the first time I'd seen him genuinely uncertain about anything. Finally, he typed, "From the moment your hands touched me while rendering aid, from when I first caught your scent, I genuinely cannot stop thinking about you, Jordan. I've been intimate with other Omegas throughout my life. Many relationships, actually. But none of them ever affected me the way you do. None of them ever felt like this." My heart accelerated dangerously. I typed nervously, "How exactly does this feel different?" Dante shifted closer by mere inches, typing deliberately, "It means you might legitimately be my fated mate." I understand how impossible that sounds. Fated mates are extraordinarily rare, almost mythological in their scarcity, but every instinct I possess as an alpha is insisting on this truth. Fated mates. The concept belonged to fairy tales and romance novels, not real life, especially not the life of someone like me. I typed honestly, "That's genuinely impossible, Dante. Those are fictional stories, and even if such bonds existed, why would someone of your status and power be destined for someone like me? I'm a deaf, financially struggling omega. You're literally everything I'm not. Powerful, wealthy, capable," he typed back with surprising intensity. "Stop diminishing yourself that way. You saved my life when any rational person would have contacted authorities or simply ignored me. That required incredible courage and compassion. You're far stronger than you realize." I studied his eyes and saw absolute sincerity. No manipulation, no deception, just raw, unfiltered honesty. He continued typing, "I initially thought I was imagining this connection, but when those men grabbed you in your garage, something primal awakened in me. I didn't just want to fight them. I wanted to utterly destroy them for touching you. That's not typical behavior for me, Jordan. I'm normally cold, calculated, completely controlled. But regarding you, I'm rapidly losing that control." My breath caught. I couldn't formulate a response, couldn't organize my chaotic thoughts into coherent words. Dante typed, "I'm not demanding you accept this immediately. I know this is overwhelming, but you deserve the truth. You deserve to understand why I'm so protective, why I brought you here. This isn't just about obligation or responsibility. It's something much deeper." Long pause. Then I slowly typed, "I don't know if I can believe in fated mates, Dante. Everything is happening too quickly, too intensely." He nodded understanding and typed, "I know. Take whatever time you need. But Jordan," he moved slightly closer, hesitantly, "may I try something? You can absolutely refuse." I nodded cautiously, uncertain but curious. Dante leaned forward slowly, giving me ample time to retreat. His lips brushed mine, gentle, tentative, respectful. Every movement asked permission without words, and defying all logic, all fear, all rational thought, I kissed him back, softly, because somewhere deep inside, despite everything, I felt it too. That inexplicable connection, that gravitational pull. When we separated, both of us were breathing heavily. Dante picked up his phone and simply typed, "Did you feel anything?" Honestly, I felt everything. Overwhelming, confusing, terrifying, but also somehow fundamentally right. I simply nodded, and he smiled, genuinely, with visible relief. Maybe fated mates weren't entirely impossible after all. The following 3 weeks passed with surprising tranquility. Dante and I grew progressively closer through small daily interactions. Every evening we shared dinner together, sometimes elaborate meals prepared by his private chef, sometimes simple takeout eaten while sitting on the floor like college students. Communication flowed primarily through phone texting, but Dante had begun seriously studying sign language specifically for me. He practiced constantly, starting with basic alphabet signs and gradually progressing to complete sentences and complex phrases. His dedication touched me deeply. He was fiercely protective, occasionally crossing into overbearing territory that made me feel suffocated. Possessive too, especially when Marco mentioned other alphas asking about me. But he was also surprisingly gentle and remarkably patient with my anxieties and insecurities. When we were alone together in the penthouse, he didn't resemble the dangerous mob boss whose reputation preceded him. He was just Dante, the man beneath the fearsome exterior. But happiness never lasts permanently when you inhabit a dangerous world. Marco burst through the door one afternoon with body language that screamed emergency. I could read panic in his posture, urgency in his movements. Dante immediately went on high alert, his entire demeanor shifting from relaxed to combat-ready in seconds. They communicated rapidly using the sign language Dante had been learning, and I caught the signal clearly. Danger. Marco showed Dante something on his phone screen. Dante's expression transformed completely, anger, tension, worry flooding his features simultaneously. I signed with concern and backed it up by typing, "What's wrong? What happened?" Dante approached me and typed carefully, choosing each word deliberately. "Vincent Moretti has discovered specific information about you. Not just that you assisted me initially, but that you're currently living here with me. He sent a direct message demanding a face-to-face meeting on neutral territory. I signed concern and typed, then meet with him and resolve this situation permanently. Dante typed seriously. He's demanding your presence at this meeting too, Jordan. He wants you there. My expression must have conveyed my shock, fear, and confusion perfectly. I signed and typed frantically. Why would he want me there? What could he possibly want from me? Dante gently grasped my hand and typed. Because he wants to personally see the Omega who has Dante Cross emotionally compromised. He's testing me, probing for weaknesses. You've become my greatest vulnerability, Jordan. He's fully aware of that fact. I typed desperately. Then refuse. Don't give him what he wants. Stay away from him completely. He used sign language carefully and typed as well. If I refuse this meeting, he'll bring the fight directly here. He'll attack the penthouse itself. I cannot risk you being caught in crossfire in this building. Then he cupped my face tenderly and mouthed clearly so I could lip read perfectly. I will remain beside you every single moment. I swear I won't allow him to harm you. Marco plus 10 additional trained guards will accompany us. Those proved to be dangerously optimistic words. The meeting occurred the following evening at an abandoned warehouse. Predictable location but strategically neutral ground. Vincent Moretti embodied everything Dante wasn't when I finally saw him in person. Exaggerated hand gestures. Ostentatious expensive clothing. The cruel smile that I could read clearly on his face even from a distance. Approximately a dozen armed men surrounded him, weapons openly displayed as intimidation. Vincent stared at me with disturbing intensity when we arrived. Analyzing, objectifying, undressing me with his eyes in a way that made my skin crawl. Dante's hand immediately moved to my waist possessively, protectively. Vincent spoke to Dante. I concentrated hard on reading his lips. So this is the famous Omega everyone's been discussing lately. Dante mouthed back coldly. Clearly, state your purpose, Vincent. Why have you demanded this meeting? Vincent's lips continued moving. I focused completely. You violated our agreement, Dante. You eliminated my primary supplier without authorization. You claimed my eastern territory without negotiation. You disrespected me publicly, and now you parade around with some deaf Omega as if you're invincible. As if you've grown weak. I watched Dante's jaw tighten dangerously. Vincent continued in what was clearly a mocking tone based on his facial expressions. You've become vulnerable, Dante. Distracted. Compromised. The great Dante Cross, brought low by an Omega who cannot perceive danger approaching. That final comment, though I couldn't hear the exact words, carried cruel intention that translated perfectly through his expression. Suddenly Vincent signaled his men. They moved swiftly, but not toward Dante as expected. Directly toward me. Everything erupted into chaos instantaneously. Visual pandemonium everywhere. Dante lunged protectively. Marco and the other guards reacted immediately. Muzzle flashes from weapons. Bodies colliding violently. Complete mayhem. Someone grabbed me from behind during the confusion. I didn't see who. A cloth covered my face suddenly. Chemical smell overpowering my senses. I struggled desperately, fought with everything I had. But darkness consumed me rapidly. The last image I captured, Dante's desperate face reaching for me. Anguish written clearly in his eyes. Then nothing. When consciousness finally returned, I found myself in a cold, dark basement. Tied securely to a metal chair. Pain radiated through my body. My head throbbed. Vincent stood before me, smiling victoriously. He positioned his phone carefully in front of my face with a typed message for me to read. Welcome back to consciousness. Jordan, don't worry. I'm not going to kill you immediately. You're far too valuable alive. Dante will come for you desperately. And when he arrives, I'll ensure he watches you suffer extensively and slowly. Then I'll eliminate you both. Terror seized me completely. I couldn't respond properly, bound too tightly. No phone to communicate. Absolutely helpless. Vincent pointed a camera directly at me, obviously recording footage for Dante to see. Then he produced a syringe, slowly. Deliberately, theatrically. I attempted struggling against the ropes, but they were impossibly tight, cutting into my wrists. He prepared the injection methodically, and I was powerless to stop him, except to pray internally, desperately, that Dante would locate me somehow. Before time ran out for both of us. After the injection, everything dissolved into agonizing confusion. Vincent had administered some deliberately slow-acting toxic substance. Fire spread gradually through my veins. Intense sweating soaked through my clothes. Uncontrollable trembling seized my muscles. Waves of severe nausea crashed over me repeatedly. The worst part. Vincent simply waited calmly, watching my suffering with clinical interest while the camera continued recording every moment for Dante to witness. He positioned his phone near my face again with another cruel typed message. He's racing here right now, probably consumed with panic, and you'll serve as the perfect trap that finally destroys the legendary Dante Cross. Rather poetic, wouldn't you say? I barely maintained consciousness. Pain overwhelmed every sense, but I refused to completely break down. Not for his camera, not for his sadistic satisfaction. Time became meaningless. Maybe minutes passed. Maybe hours. I couldn't determine anything anymore. But then, the basement door exploded violently inward with tremendous force. Smoke filled the space rapidly. Bright muzzle flashes. Complete visual chaos erupting instantly. Through the gradually clearing smoke, Dante materialized. But this version bore no resemblance to the controlled man I'd come to know. This was pure primal rage incarnate. His alpha nature fully unleashed without any restraint whatsoever. His eyes blazed constant gold, feral and terrifying. He tore through Vincent's men like they were made of paper. Absolutely ruthless. Brutal efficiency in every movement. When he finally reached Vincent directly, he slammed him against the wall with devastating force that cracked concrete. I could read Dante's lips clearly even through my deteriorating condition. You touched what belongs to me. Vincent choked out something defiant. Dante's hand wrapped around his throat with potentially lethal pressure. Dante! I screamed desperately with whatever strength remained. My deaf voice broke completely, emerged distorted and nearly unrecognizable, but I tried with everything I had left. He stopped immediately, turned sharply. His eyes found me instantly, bound, shaking violently, obviously critically ill. In literally 1 second he reached my side. Ropes severed rapidly with a blade. He lifted me carefully into his strong arms with surprising gentleness. I watched his lips moving desperately. Jordan. Stay with me. Please. You have to stay with me. He frantically retrieved his phone and texted Marco urgently. I glimpsed the screen. Doctor immediately. Poisoned. Emergency. Everything blurred severely after that moment. Harsh hospital lighting. Medical equipment operating silently around me. Doctors rushing frantically. Dante's hand never releasing mine through everything. And somewhere deep within the darkness, I felt our bond growing. That inexplicable connection between us intensifying impossibly stronger. I regained full consciousness 2 complete days later. Dante sat vigil beside my hospital bed, completely unshaven, utterly exhausted, dark circles prominent under his eyes, but absolutely relieved when my eyes finally opened. He immediately grabbed his phone and typed rapidly, "You terrified me beyond reason, Jordan. I genuinely thought I'd lost you permanently." I managed a weak smile and slowly signed, "Sorry for causing you such worry." Dante signed back firmly, "Don't you dare apologize. Absolutely none of this was your fault in any way." He kissed my forehead gently with pure relief, then typed carefully, "Vincent is dead. He'll never harm anyone again. His entire criminal organization has been completely dismantled. You're finally truly safe now, Jordan." I signed slowly, "Only because you rescued me. You saved my life." He typed immediately, "No. You fought back. You survived when most people would have surrendered completely. You possess incredible strength, Jordan." Long, waited pause. Then Dante grasped my hand carefully and typed slowly, deliberately, "Jordan, I cannot continue this pretense anymore. I cannot keep pretending this is merely simple attraction or basic fated mate instincts. What I feel goes profoundly deeper than that." He used the sign language he'd studied specifically for me. "I love you," then continued typing, "completely, unconditionally, without reservation. I don't care that you're deaf. That's simply part of who you are as a person. I don't care about your omega status. I care that you're you, the incredibly courageous man who saved my life without any hesitation." The man who made me feel genuinely human again after years of emotional coldness. Tears filled my eyes automatically, real overwhelming tears of emotion. I carefully signed and whispered as best I could despite my weak, imperfect voice. I love you too, Dante. More than I can express. Dante's eyes suddenly glowed brilliant gold, his alpha nature officially claiming me as his destined mate. The bond snapped completely into place. I felt it absolutely everywhere throughout my entire being. He carefully signed and clearly mouthed for me to see, then be mine, forever and always. My mate, my omega, my absolute everything. I signed back without any hesitation whatsoever, forever, always, completely yours. And when he kissed me slowly, gently, lovingly, all the pain, all the fear, all the doubt, all the insecurity, everything melted away gradually, until only we remained. Because this wasn't merely a simple love story. This was a genuine fated bond. Destiny itself. A dangerous mafia boss and a courageous deaf omega. Against absolutely all odds and expectations. Forever intertwined and inseparable. 3 months later, I stood in my rebuilt garage, now expanded and modernized with Dante's resources, but still fundamentally mine. The sign above the door read Jordan's Automotive in bold letters. Customers came regularly now, referred by Dante's extensive network, but the best part of every day was when Dante arrived each evening, signing his greeting before kissing me hello. We built something real together, a partnership based on mutual respect, genuine love, and that inexplicable bond that had pulled us together from the very beginning. Against all logic and probability, the fated mate legends had proven true, and I'd never been happier.